to the Morse Code Podcast, where we have conversations with entrepreneurially minded creatives in music, film, and writing. My name's Corby, and I'm hoping these little talks inspire you to push deeper into your own work, whether you're a full-time professional or just curious about what it's actually like to live as an indie creative. Before we get into our first guest ever, I've got to let you know that we just finished a Kickstarter campaign and we're able to raise almost $20,000 toward bringing you this first season. Huge thanks to everyone who believed in us, especially Heather Schroeder, Catherine Hinson, and Dino and Leslie Joby. This episode of the Morse Code Podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, Ranch Vovo, a film production house located in Nashville, Tennessee, and devoted to bringing quirky, compelling narrative stories to life. I'm really excited to bring you this conversation with artist, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist Joe Pisapia. Joe has one of the longest lists of creative collaborations in Nashville. He was a longtime member of the band Guster. He wrote and produced Katie Lang's acclaimed album, Sing It Loud. And he just produced the latest Ben Folds album, What Matters Most, which came out this spring. In this wide-ranging conversation, we talk about how he accidentally came to found the pop and indie rock renaissance in Nashville in the early 2000s and how he got involved with Guster. We also talk about now or never moments, the idea of meaning for artists in the age of AI, taking creative leaps into the unknown and learning by doing. I learned a lot from this talented, nurturing musician and even got to join him on a few songs. If you get something out of the Morse Code Podcast, please like and subscribe. New episodes come out every Thursday. And now, here's my conversation with Joe Pisapia. Joe Pisapia, how's it going?
Pretty well. How about you?
It's going good, man. We got the all the apparatuses going the same direction, I think. Apparati. And I'm just grateful in advance for, who knows what's going to happen. It could end in flames.
We're hoping for the best.
Yeah, we're hoping for the best. And, that you took a chance is everything to me. Let's, I kind of want to get into, past, present, future, if you wanted to. And I'll open with a little anecdote, which is that my first knowledge of you was through your band Guster. And
gotcha. That's my band, by the way.
Your band.
My personal band. They would love that.
I bet they would.
I started it.
It's yours.
Finished it.
Yeah. Bookended all the way through. But I was dating a gal who thought I was all right, but I was no Guster. Tell you what, that was the band, and so I was like, so this is my turn to take my revenge on maybe. But you're from up northeast is what I want to say.
Right.
And that's where your band started.
Yes.
That wasn't your band.
Well, yeah.
Where's Guster from?
Well, Guster, I met those guys after I moved to Nashville. Okay. I was already in Nashville, but I grew up in New Jersey. And one of the guys in Guster also grew up in New Jersey. His name's Adam Gardner. Mm-hmm. He grew up not too far from where I grew up. Yeah.
I know his name.
Yeah.
Okay, so you weren't you weren't an original band member of Guster?
This will put it in perspective. The band had been a band for 11 years before I joined.
Okay. But then it went...
Oh, baby. It just
totally.
Was like, 2.0. I don't know. Let's put some marketing terms. No, but, and I had met them... So my brother and I had a band called Joe Mark's Brother.
Yes.
And two people take credit for introducing Joe Mark's Brother to Guster, and we never know who's telling the truth. Josh Rouse said he introduced him, and Josh Rouse's drummer, David Gerke, said he introduced us to the Gusters. So we never know who was telling the truth, still to this day. But we'll just give them both equal credit.
For now.
And so because they were opening for Guster, Josh Rouse, and... then they gave our CD to Guster, and then they were like, you guys should open for us. And we're like, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Because you know how it is to get a good opening gig, and we did it, and we all became friends. And then we just stayed in touch, and, one thing led to another, They
needed a new dude.
You know what it was? They were like, so we were, they were recording in Nashville, a record called Keep It Together. And they were working with a friend named Roger Mutino, who's a producer in town, one of my mentors. And so they're working at Sound Emporium on Belmont. I'm living on Belmont at the time. I had my little apartment studio. And Ryan would ride his bike down to see me. We'd have coffee, this and that. And one day he just stopped by, and I was writing a record of mine called Daydreams. It was like I wanted to play folky instruments like banjos and this and that. So I'm like, let's do a thing where the bass is organ pedals and the main rhythm is banjo. And we were just fooling around, and we did a demo of this song called Jesus on the Radio, and then they wanted to cut that for their record, and then. So I went up, to record with them. They had been recording in Nashville.
So they wanted to track one of your songs, and then as maybe a bonus or whatever, it's like, hey, come and swing by. Maybe you sang a harmony on the song that you said because you said you swung by Sound Emporium while they were tracking that record.
Well, no, he came by my place.
Okay.
And so which was down the street.
Yes.
It was probably like they were doing other parts of the recording that he didn't need to be there for. Watch the paint dry as we all do in the studio.
Sure.
So he came down. We wrote that song together.
Okay. Oh,
then,
you wrote it. You cut it. Okay.
Yeah, we wrote it, and then we did a demo at my place because I had my first, first computer with digital audio in it. How do I work this thing?
Yep.
400 megahertz G4.
That's a lot of power, man. It's a lot of horses under the hood.
Woo! Got a 40 gig hard drive for $400, and so yeah, we wrote that song, and then we recut it. And I was so excited to go to the studio because I had my home studio. And I was so excited to go where they were recording in Bearsville because they had done different phases of the record. And so I went up to Bearsville in Woodstock, New York to record with them. And I was like, oh, we're going to go in a professional studio. Mm-hmm. We're going to track this song. And Roger Mouton was like, this song sounds so like Around the Campfire. Let's actually do let's do a fire in the house where everybody's staying. Mm. Bring over a little portable Pro Tools rig and tape you guys recording like sitting on the chairs by the fire. And I'm like, that's how we did it.
Studio experience.
I wanted studio, like proper mics and
the audio lab.
Yeah, the audio lab. And so we did it super natural like that. And and Brian, I think the drummer, was playing like a cardboard box or something, whatever was like nearby, or a suitcase or something. And
folky.
Yeah. Total super folk.
That's great, man.
Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas style.
Sure. And that was your first experience recording with Guster. And and it was positive experience in spite of not being, state of the art environments as you desired. But one thing led to another. And this is how many years later were you kind of in the band or invited?
Well,
shortly thereafter.
That record. Okay, it was shortly thereafter because that record. What that record was for them was an exploration. They were like, let's do a record without the rules of our band as we know it. They were a 3-piece band, and they kept the production really sparse. This one, they were like, we want to do weird guitars and keyboards and just do a fully produced record. And so they were trying their hand at that. And then because they had tried so many hands in on the things, they needed an extra set of hands to do the work. And they said, hey, Joe, would you consider coming out with us to do the promo tour of this record? It'll only be for like 3 months while we release the record. And I was like, sure, that sounds like vacation. I don't have to carry gear even. And like, I'm going to be on a tour bus. Great.
Yeah.
And I also knew, because my brother and I had 3-piece band. I'm like, sometimes we wished we could have like a sort of a guy or a gal that would be a multi-instrumentalist, like the Peter Holsapple to the REM. Sure. And I was like, sure, I know exactly what role to play. I'll just do whatever you need done, little bits here and there. Mm-hmm. I'll be like the seasonings, just the extra. I'll be like the seasonings that you are in the back of the cabinet. You guys are in the front of the cabinet. You're the salt and pepper. I'm like the cumin and the, herbs de Provence or whatever.
Those subtle flavors.
Yeah, subtle flavors.
Yeah, man. That's you.
Yeah.
Joe Subtle Flavors Pisapia. That's really interesting. And, it speaks to you're having a long life in music. And anybody who has a long life in music, it has chapters and unforeseen twists and turns. And that's not everybody. That's kind of, I've gotten my version of this racket for, 3 decades now. And I'm really interested in the people that, they turned 30 or 35 and they're like, you know what? I don't want to do the backup plan. I have to do this and I'm going to figure out how to. And to me, like I've watched you from afar, like we've never really talked before, but just know that I've seen, your version of doing that and been inspired by it. So Thank you for leading by example.
Well, I'm glad that it continues or whatever, however it works out. Because it's funny when you said mid-30s, and I was thinking that's significant for me because I was probably 36 when I joined Guster. Mm-hmm. I think it was around that age, and it was also around the first time where I had more money than I needed to in the bank, like by X amount of dollars. You know what I mean? Like where it wasn't just like, whew, I pulled it off again this month. I did it somehow. Yeah. Maybe that was like around the same time where, I'm actually making a living doing music that is like not what our peers would have done that took straight jobs, nowhere near that. Yeah. But at least where it's like, well, I have like enough money to get sushi twice this month.
Yeah.
No,
living large.
Yeah, living large.
Yeah. And I mean, that was probably really affirming. I don't know if let me put it as a question. Was there a moment where we've all had moments where we're like, oh shit, this is not going to work out and I've got to consider other things. But usually those moments become more dire or, more concentrated as one gets older. And so were you ever in a situation where you were like, something's got to give, like I can't do this forever? Or did it feel like a now or never thing ever with you? Or were you just going to always do it?
I had a now or never moment before all this. And it might have been the impetus for me to write my first solo record, which was because I was always more of a head in the clouds kind of whatever, this is a beautiful experience of life and everything just magically works out until it doesn't. And then it's like, holy shit, I'm 33 years old. I got $50 in the bank and I'm up here in the mountains with my van and my van is broken down coming back from Vermont to Nashville and it's in Pennsylvania. And it's stuck there, and I could buy a new van for what it's going to cost to fix this van. Yeah. And I remember, and I was probably 33. I'd already produced like a major label record, and I remember getting paid $20,000, and I thought I should be rich by now. And then all that $20,000 just got eaten up with catching up with being poor for so long. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I remember I called my mom. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I just don't understand this. And I was like, can I borrow some money from you so I could buy a pair of speakers? Because I had like this JVC component system that I was using for all my recording work back then. I'm like, I need a pair of like decent monitors and a amp because there wasn't really powered monitors back then. Yep. I need a CD burner so I can make CDs for $400, a bargain. Yeah. You know what I mean? I needed certain things. And I need a $100 microphone. I need this and that. And so she lent me X amount of dollars. I think it was $5,000. I put together a studio. And I did that first record. And then I started, and you know how like you do a little record and it came out really well for the crappy bare bones gear I had at the time. And I borrowed stuff from mentors and friends. But I had like just a shitty little M-Audio interface, $200 interface with 4 inputs. And I was able to make everything work out. And then right after that record, people said, oh, you could make music? You record our songs? You could record demos or songs? And I was like, yeah, man, come on over. And then I start, all of a sudden, I was like, oh, wait, when's the last time I waited tables? It's been a while. Yeah. So it was like that, it's like the whole age-old thing of like, whatever, the Parsifal myth of like, you have to go through the valley of darkness before you really hit your stride. Yeah. And it's like, so I had to completely like have like, oh shit, I'm 33 or whatever, and I have no money in the bank. I should, and my bed's on the floor. I should grow up. Yeah. And totally, and then all of a sudden it was like, and I remember on that trip, I had received a call from somebody that said, Joe, call me back. I have a boy band that needs a record. And I was like, I'm not going to call them back. What do I know about boy bands? Yeah. And then I'm like, yeah.
Cut to.
And I was listening to the Lord of the Rings book on tape the whole way. So it's like so mythological. It was perfect. I was like, this is good for me to experience this level of mythology and poetry in form and function. Like that'll help me spin bullshit for the rest of my life. You know, these are good experiences. So I said, hey, you still got that boy band? And so I didn't know how to do that, but we did this record. The band was called 1222 from Omaha, Nebraska. And we're still BFFs to this day, two brothers. So I totally identified that, the two brothers being in the band. And we learned how to do stuff together. They would show me music that I thought at the time, you know, when I was younger, I thought it was cheesy. I was dismissed. I was like, New Kids on the Block, what? And they would show. I was like, oh yeah, that's badass. And then we would learn how to do pop stuff, and it was like. And then I realized, I have this I really love to scratch the itch of pop. Like, I love that. Yeah. You know, of course you feel like an imposter doing it, which almost makes it even more naughty and fun. It makes it more taboo. Yeah. So that was a great experience. And it turned out it's something you would never think you would do. And it was the first record I produced by myself without like another bigger producer, or, you know what I mean? I had to do all the engineering myself. I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. And it gave me a lot of confidence. You know what I mean? I learned a lot.
For sure. I mean, anytime you step into the unknown, it's, you know, anytime you're courageous enough to take a try at something that you're not qualified to do, you find that you pull it off, and then you learn that much more. And then, you know, you stitch enough of those experiences together, and maybe you have a career to look after.
Well, I remember they were going to pay me $5,000, and that's the money I borrowed from my mom. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm going to get $5,000 from all this gear you just helped me buy. And it was like, this felt so clean. You know what I mean?
Man, I could so relate to that. This is about you, but just as a, you know, like meets like, I went to college in a little town in Washington State called Bellingham, north of Seattle. It's where Ben Gibbard from Death Cab he grew up in Seattle, but went to school there. His band started there, but I had nothing to do with any of that, and I didn't care about that kind of music because I was really into bluegrass at the time. And I had gotten, some fool hired me to do a soundtrack for a movie that he was doing, and I was like, I don't know how to do a soundtrack, but there was like, you know, $8,000 or something, and I still was like, I don't know how to do. I was like, I don't know how to do that. I don't think I can do it. And my buddy at the time, my kind of musical buddy, he was like, fuck off, dude. Take that money. We'll figure it out. And so, you know, we talked a little bit more about it, and I had made records in studios up to that point and paid, you know, the hourly fee or whatever. But his proposal was like, why don't you buy a laptop and, you know, an interface, and we'll figure out how to do it. And so that's what we did. And you know, the score was, who cares? It was fine. You know, there was maybe a few moments of blinding brilliance, and it's a long torpid swamp of nothing. But at the end of it, I had some gear, you know, and then I was playing a lot of like old gospel. There was a buddy in my town that he could really sing great, and he was a great picker, and he's also a weird picker. He didn't know how to flat pick, but he did, you know. It was all wrong, but just so compelling. It was like on fire every time he did it, and maybe it would crash and burn, and maybe it would just be like, whoa, what just happened? But he was a raging partier too, but we kind of had a little bit of a brother duet thing going with the old timey music. So I thought that would be an opportunity. Like, I don't know how to make a record, but, you know, strip down and maybe 2 instruments or 5 instruments, I can handle that. And, you know, I recorded a full length record, you know, in my house with very little money. And I knew a lot of people in the Northwest from the picking scene. And so they just came by and did favors. And all of a sudden I had a record, and it was actually good. You know, I didn't write but maybe 2 songs on it, but I was proud of it. And then that was like, well, maybe I can make a rock record now. And, you know, I don't know. I'm still intimidated to this day. Don't know how. Am not interested in learning how to record drums. It's just too much for me. It's like, there's too many mics. There's too many things to notch out. There's too many. It's just, whoa. So I hired out that part, but I did everything else. Anyway, it's just to like, and now like when you're like empowered and you have the gear, everybody has their own gear now. It's like, but back in the day it was a little different. Like, it was more intimidating, and it was just barely starting to be affordable, but having that, and then like taking the time to learn, you know, how to do it, God, this serves you for a lifetime, you know. And it's to this day, you know, I record all the time. That's what kind of led to this. And
right. Let me ask you a question. What year are you talking about when you made this transition? Like when you got the job, you said yes. You felt the fear and did it anyway, as my therapist would say.
Yeah.
You know?
03, 04?
Yeah.
Something right
So
in
that was
there.
around the same time as I was like 99, getting my first computer. So we probably had the same type of stuff.
My computer was a little faster is all, but just a little.
Yeah. But
3 years faster.
yet it was a miracle that we could do this shit digitally back then, because right before that you had to work on ADAT if you wanted to have a studio. And I have two guys. I've an intern I'm talking with and an assistant, both straight out of Belmont. One person is still in Belmont. And I mentioned ADAT, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I know what ADAT is. That's the connector that goes." I said, "But do you know what an ADAT is?"
Yeah.
And they're both like, "There was a thing called an ADAT."
Yeah.
I said, "You ever see the VHS tapes at your grandma's house? That's what we would record on."
Yeah.
And if you had 3 of them, if you want to do 24 tracks, you'd wait for rewind and play. Remember? Mm-hmm. So the whole world of technology made people like you and I, gave us a seat at the table.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm putting together a project studio for some people right now. And yesterday we were looking up stuff like, wow, we need a piece to do the monitoring, blah, 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 blah. Something like a Mackie Big Knob, you know what I mean? Just think it out, I just Google Mackie Big Knob. Well, here's a Mackie Big Knob that has 1 input and 1 output for $59 or $69. I'm like, I can't believe that how, in reach this stuff is.
Yes.
So there's no excuse. Like if you have ideas, you should do them. You should just do them and have some fun with it. You know what I mean? If you're a young person thinking, should I do this? Am I capable? Yeah, you are. Go ahead and do it,
Absolutely. Speaking of doing stuff, I like to break up these interviews with a little bit of performance. So we're just going to take a break and Joe's going to play a tune. So
great.
Let's see what happens.
If we saw the truth, it would blow us down to dust without a pause. So for now, it's probably safer that we're lost. Far, far away from a sense of peace and harmony. We don't know why it has to be so strange. And if we're only strangers fighting for our lives, or do we melt when we see each other's eyes? If we felt the love that hides behind our own imaginings, we probably fall to pieces in a blink. Far, far away from a sense of equanimity, we tire that it has to feel so dark. And if we're only strangers fighting for our stake, where's the heart so prone to break? From compassion and understanding, we tire that it has to be so hard. What if we saw the truth, that the is that lives in me is the is that lives in you?
Right before the break, we were talking about, what's commonly called the democratization of, creative experience with regard to tools and how accessible they all are. And I mean, to me, those things are always, it's like, it cuts both ways. It's wonderful that more and more people have access to make things, but with that, it becomes harder to stand out. And also, and this is a little bit more interesting to me, something that's always drawn me to music was the meaning of it. Meaning, just, I don't know, whatever meaning music gives you, that's why we started down this road in the first place. We'll have our story. Maybe we'll get into yours about what first inspired you. But I'm always after that, and I remember saying, like naively, something that hurt my feelings when I was in my early 20s is I would, spend $20 on a CD of a band that I liked because I liked their last record. And I was like, I don't like this. Like, you know what I mean? Like whatever it was. And I was just like kind of annoyed that I was just like, I felt robbed or something. And I've never had that experience with books, for instance. I'm a big book nerd, and maybe it's partly because books are cheaper or something, or you can always find something in a book, or maybe it's because you're doing half the work whenever you read a book. I don't exactly know why, but with the meaning part of it, there's something that's lost. I'm hypothesize. When you make a thing that's difficult to do easy, or if you let me put it a different way, when you render the expertise required to perform at a proficient, world-class level, you render that expertise null and void. It doesn't matter anymore because you can always throw the drums on the grid and it straightens it all out. And that's how people want to hear music anyway. And there's something about that I lament because it's gone forever. Drums just weird. Drums are coming up again. To me, like the apex of drumming, of recorded drumming, is like 80s Don Henley record style gated fucking drumming, like where you feel the groove, and it's not on a grid. It's like it's A+ level feel and drumming. And nowadays, I remember when auto-tune was starting to take over the industry, and it was like controversial for 1 year before everybody just like started doing it. But I remember like Nickel Creek put out a record, and there was a sticker on it that said no auto-tune, and it was like a statement of purity. But like as soon as the means come out, it's like whether or not you use them, it doesn't matter anymore. You know what I mean? Right. It's like everybody's like, throw the drums on the grid, or like now, like, how about we don't have any drums on this whole album, but you won't be able to tell, or you can kind of tell, or whatever. Now it's all about the creative choices that you make, and a little bit less about the proficiency you demonstrate on using those, making the most of those choices. That was not a question, but what do you think about that, or do you think about that ever, or have I think
you, about
have
it
you
all
ever?
The time?
Okay,
and especially now we have to think about it. Here's why we have to think about it now. This is why this conversation is highly important, and it's the only thing I'm thinking about, and it's the only thing I want to talk about. Only there's kidding.
I love this.
I always say things that are so dramatic like that.
Superlatives, the man of superlatives.
My wife will make me. It makes her crazy. But
I know I'd catch her eye roll probably.
Yeah, she's like, was here the only thing, Joe. But let me say what I want to say about the AI, man, right? It's like the elephant in the room.
Sure.
Okay, so, and it comes down to your values. Okay, you said the word meaning, right? Well, there's meanings and values and all that stuff, and lifestyle choice. Lifestyle, how you want to experience this whole thing. And I think part of why this is important is because right now I'm standing at this place going, okay, what appeals to me now as far as like how I want to live an artistic life? Now that also is a first world benefit. Like,
what a luxury.
What a luxury to be able to say, I would rather work on this than that. Oh, okay, so that's really luxurious, and I know I'm in a special position. So, but I have been thinking about that a lot, where it's like, and what makes me feel, what tools will I engage in? What tools am I interested in? What, blah, 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 blah. long story short, I think that I've always felt like a bit of an outsider musically. And because I never wanted to, I could never really make peace with being in a genre. Like I just didn't really, at the sacrifice of maybe even having a more of a career path, I just didn't want to smooth out too many edges, and I wanted to try stuff.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be like, I want to have this song be like a bluegrass song, this song be like, like Flaming Lips, and then I want this one to sound, feel like even like cheesy jazz or whatever, like Sade, or not that Sade is cheesy, but I mean, like I want to have those elements. And so I never wanted to put myself in a pigeonhole, because then it felt, to me personally, it felt like I'm doing a desk job then, or I'm having like, this is where you step into your cubicle and you don't really go outside it. And I was like, I didn't choose this life to do that. I didn't want to impose that on myself.
Man, I can relate to that so well. And I think that there's a huge price to be paid for that kind of free thinking approach to creativity. And but if you have to pay it, then you just do, which is that, like, the music business wants a brand, in a way, and they want you, I don't want to say they, but like, it's easier for people when they see, Coke, they know how it's going to taste, and you can be cherry Coke on your next record, or vanilla Coke, but it's all kind of hovering around Coke. And I also came at music from just a very naive perspective. I'm still, to this day, I have a naive relationship to everything I'm into, because I just go where I'm interested, and that has not served me well in terms of success in the business writ large, because it's hard. You need industry people on some level, perhaps, to like cut through. And I mean, I'm saying this as a guy who's played, like, I don't know, well over 1,000 shows over 15 years, and like, I played a lot of music, but I had to figure out how to do it on my own. And a lot of that was like booking my own stuff and whatever, making it work. And whereas I think that if I would have, I think back in my 20s, and I was just like, man, I don't know if I can play electric guitar really well, but I'm interested in it right now, and I'm just going to do it. And I don't think that I really was, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Like, at some level, I know now better what I do better than, I know what I do well enough to be like genuinely competitive in whatever that means. And maybe I lean that direction a little bit more than I used to, but still not a lot more. And anyway, so I think that there's a price to be paid for having a naive relationship to music. And I'm not trying to say that you also did that, but you were led by your heart, and a heart goes where it goes, and you followed it. And you weren't a brand, Joe Pisapia trademark, copyright. You were a guy, you were a soul.
Well, let me tell you where the payoff is coming. It's not coming from an expected place that anybody would have thought. For me personally, it's not coming financially. It's not coming from recognition. Here's where I'm experiencing a certain validation. I'm experiencing a certain validation in something you said, which is the music business always wanted to corral you into a brand, and that makes sense. Of course, they need to have a one sentence around what you do, and that's not, they're not at fault by doing that. But the new boss is even worse, because the new boss has zero curiosity, because it's not built into the algorithm. It's not built into the algorithm of a robot to have curiosity about maybe your broader minded approach to an art form.
Yeah,
and it's not a fault of them either. But when you let the algorithm do the job, I'm going to give you, for instance, I was doing a record with an artist who the algorithm thought that they were Americana folk rock. And then we wanted to do more of a pop record. And the person who handles the liaisonship between the artists and the streaming services said, well, just so you know, the algorithm
is already
thinks you're
leaning this way. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, well, okay, that is living and dying by that sword. We know that we have to work within those parameters or not, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, it really is no man's land. And
There's no person at the center of that making a choice.
That's right.
It's just a machine. Yeah.
It's just a machine now. And so it's even worse than it used to be, which is also why it's like less fucks could always be given. Like, in other words, I guess where I always felt a little bit guilty, and the reason I felt guilty by not making up a decision of what I wanted, what I should have been, or corralling my thing into a one-liner, was that I had other people depending on me, like my brother, my best friend in life, saying, are we ever going to make some money at this? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't think so.
Don't look good.
It's not looking good. It used to not look good. Now it's not looking. And I remember I would play the songs that I wanted to do on the record, and even Hags, our bass player Hags' brother, heard the demo. He's like, "What the fuck is Joe trying not? Is Joe trying not to get a record deal?"
Yeah.
And I was like, but this is just the music that I want to do. I'm idealistic. Yeah. People are going to love that I'm blending bossa nova with, whatever, heavy rhythms and drums. And, people will, of course, love that, and of course, they, some people really dug it. But now, like I said, now I feel really good that I have that weird material that my younger self was naively thinking a lot of people are going to love this. And of course, no, that's not true. But the people who do, and the fact that it was done, the fact that I have that music now makes me feel validated that, like, in other words, like you're saying, there might be a year of like, oh, they used AI to write that song. And then 2 years from now, I was like, well, yeah, I used AI to write the song because it came up with better lines than I could. I'm not saying that we should or should not use it. We're just not going to know who's going to use it or not. And so having a catalog of eclectic music that precedes the big turn, to me, is validating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't mean it's monetary. It doesn't mean that it has any validation in a worldly sense. But in a historic sense of, like, humanity, sure, it has a lot of meaning. It has meaning,
And also, there's something, and maybe you can relate to this, but a while ago, I kind of changed my lifestyle vis-a-vis music right before. I was kind of leaning to do it. I was already leaning that way prior to the pandemic, and then that just like kind of helped me fully turn that corner. And with that came a new bliss that I didn't really know that was waiting for me, which was that, and this accompanying realization, which is that to me, success is, you wake up and you go to bed, and having those hours as closely resemble your ideal way to spend a day as possible is such a win. And I have been incredibly fortunate to be able to do that, and I try and fail on a daily basis. I'm doing this crazy thing now with a TV show, and my wife and I do a lot of film stuff, and it's just, and it's like, and I write, but every day it's just like, okay, I got 3 hours a day to write. Like, I'm just going to try to do this. And to me, I'm in a place where I'm like, so much rather do that than spend those 3 hours in my car driving to another town, which is what, I did. But I did that for 15 years and I loved it. I wanted to know when I moved to Nashville, I had a very clear goal, which is like, I want to know what it's like to be sick of touring. I want to know, because all I wanted to do forever, like from 16, was to just play shows all the time for anyone who would listen. And I got to do it. You know what I mean? It was great. And, there's trade-offs with everything. The trade-off was that you spend a lot of time on the road, and maybe you don't have a life outside of it. And that was a sacrifice I was willing to make for a very long time. And then, now there's a point at which it starts to be like variations on a theme, and those variations get increasingly small. And I also watched people that, I looked up to as being like, well, that's a successful artist, or and they're playing, 500 cap rooms or 5,000 cap rooms or arena or whatever. But I'm like, at the end of the day, they're kind of doing the same thing. It's still like meet at the van, meet at the bus, drive, sound check, play the show, go to the hotel, wake up, do the same thing. The numbers change, but the experience in its essence is kind of the same. And I was like, maybe it's okay if I don't. I've never toured in a tour bus.
Right.
Maybe I'll never will. And you know what? That's okay. Let's hear another song.
Once there was a love, she was an angel sometimes. Sometimes she was the devil in white. It was always a big surprise. Once there was a love, she lived so far away. I would always count down the days till I'd see her from face to face. It isn't hard to get what you want, but do you know what it is you want? I believe that's the hard part. It isn't hard to get what you want, but do you know what you really want? That to me is the hard part. Once there was a love, we would spend Sundays in the park. When she'd smile, it would light up my heart, and I would just forget everything. Once there was a love, we had a long history. It would take years before we were free from the ties to each other's hearts. It isn't hard to get what you want. Do you know what it is you want? That to me is the hardest part. It isn't hard to get what you want, but do you know what you really want? That to me is the harder part. Once there was a love, she was an angel sometimes. Sometimes she was the devil in white. It was always a big surprise.
So what's going on next? What's coming up? What are you working on that you're excited about, or whatever you want to tell me?
Are we recording now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Oh, so what's coming up next? Well, I'm working on. Do you know who Chuck Mead is? Chuck's Chuck
BRO 549.
Yeah,
he's the founding member and singer.
The way Chuck and I met was in 1994. We both worked at this restaurant called The Mill Bakery, Eatery, and Brewery on Broadway, right where Nashville used to be now, which is condos.
Yeah,
like most of Nashville.
That building. Yeah,
just like those condos over there. That's where we met. Those condos over there. Yeah. And so, yes, we met there. We had moved to Nashville around the same time, and he and I were like trying, in between, like doing the waiting. So what are you doing in Nashville?
Yeah.
Everybody there it was almost like a class. Like everybody we worked with had just moved there. And so we met, even I'm friends with a lot of the people we met at that restaurant. And so he and I were talking about, he's like, man, I'm really into this. I'm really into Rockpile and Nick Lowe. I'm like, me too. And he was like going to do Dos Cajones before BR 549. And we just planted these seeds of like, I was like, here's how I'm going to set up my guitar. I'm going to have 410s and the Super Reaver. We're going to have the AC30 over here. We would just geek out about guitar tones and amps and stuff. And so these conversations that were just happenstance were like almost like planting a little seed that we would return to.
Yeah.
And so I had done a record with those guys, Chuck Mead and his Grassy Knoll Boys, called Free State Serenade, which was probably 10 years ago. And so he's like, man, I want to do some more music. But this stuff, I want it to be more of a punk attitude and this and that. And I'm like, great, let's do it. Like, let's just do Band in the Room. So we just, I'm borrowing this really sick piece of gear from Ben Folds, and it's a 1950 Collins all-tube broadcast console. And I'm obsessed with using it, and it just makes ribbon mics go, wow, you know, like that's
Did you throw something up on your gram?
I probably did, because I'm like, look at this thing, look how cool it is, you know? And it looks like it's from even the knobs are made of Bakelite, so they feel just really good.
So
They're
good.
just like, ooh, that's... And it smells great, and it's really hot. It gets really hot. And
it smells great.
It's just
You don't
smells
hear that too often with audio gear.
It just you open up, it's like, that's the smell of my childhood there, like tube amps in a little room, like practicing, you know what I mean? It's just, and even like today's like a little overcast, like the smell of tubes in Nashville on a rainy day. And it just reminds me of good, wholesome feelings of like productivity and creativity.
Yeah.
And it's instant. That smell, it instantly brings me to that beautiful place. And so we just recorded like, you know, here's the kick drum, here's the bass amp, here's the guitar amp, and there's a big piece of rock and roll coming at you in real time, just like that. And then there's a ribbon mic, with stereo ribbon mic with going through that console that I wanted to build that whole sound around, you know, with compression and like just excitement and just bombast. And
so a single stereo ribbon mic?
There's a lot more mics involved, but not too many more. It's very simple miking. Like we were talking about drums. This has not to get too into the geekdom, but it's the Glyn Johns overhead setup, which is one mic coming across the floor tom like this, and one mic coming like this and cardioid over the middle of the kit, and then a mic on the kick and a mic on the snare, and that's the drum sound. In addition to this close room and another far away room.
It's a cardioid as the overhead?
Both are in cardioid.
Okay.
So it's like, and the way that I think somebody said, I think even Glyn Johns was like, you don't have to measure them. They just, you know, I think I heard that recently.
Yeah.
But because I'd rather do, you know, because I didn't grow up learning engineering. I learned engineering as a way to like, as a method, you know what I mean? What is it called? The form follows function, or, you know, like just the method to the madness. I had to learn it.
By doing,
Yeah, like necessity being the mother of invention. That's what I wanted to say.
Yes.
And so anyway, the way I would do it scientifically is take a piece of string and measure the distance between the middle of the snare and the top mic, and then the side mic too, so that the snare would be in phase. And sometimes I would even put a string in the kick where the kick meets the beater, hold it there with the beater, and then check that one too to make sure that, you know, and try to find the best relationship between the two.
It makes you feel like a scientist.
Yeah.
Put on your little lab coat.
You know,
get a little
measuring tape does come out here
it.
and there. It kind of does, because it's like sometimes I do that. I measure stuff just to see like where it's like, oh, now I have a plan.
Yeah.
You know, for a future thing, and I could say, oh yeah, no, I've actually
this works. I know that I can
for
duplicate
years and
these
years.
results.
Yes, I could duplicate these results in a hurry.
Yeah.
And so it's like tools come in handy, you know.
it's
But anyway,
like analog presets, or you know, it's like real time presets.
Exactly.
You know?
There's your presets. Yeah.
That's that's how you're recording
these new Chuck Mead songs. Yeah. And so
and is that you have a studio that you record out of here in town, or is it like a room that can accommodate, is it how compared to this room? Just
it's a big room. Like we bought a house with a building in the back.
Okay.
And I looked for years, and we found this house that had a building in the back, and because it was already existing structure, we were able to build it bigger. Like build a cubic footage out of square footage. And it was also, it just was a really great situation because it was downgrade from the house, so we could build a little higher than usual, you know? And so we made a nice tracking room out of it.
Is it a tracking room and control room, or is it all okay?
And that was a mandatory thing for me, because before that, I always had one big open space, and I thought, you know what, I'm never going to get better as an engineer unless I could hear in real time,
what's
soloing in place and all that, what's really happening, and be able to be like, oh, this change makes me happy, or this change makes me happy, you know. And I know that there are great, because I'm meeting young people coming out of Belmont, which I feel is an amazing facility, and they're already really smart with stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, because I took the knucklehead path, it's, I'm like, oh, I just realized this.
Yeah,
you know what I
the
mean?
knucklehead path yields many an unanticipated discovery.
It does.
Yeah. And there's also a taste that comes with time that you're vintage in the best sense of the word. You've listened to so much more music than those kids, so you have something to learn from them, but they have a lot to learn from you, and I have a lot to learn from you.
Well, likewise. And it feels good to know that, because even this new assistant I'm meeting with now, I'm like, he's already really great. And I'm thinking like, I'm going to learn a lot from him, and I could show him a couple things, but he's already mirrored back to me what he and I think some of the stuff is the interpersonal communication, just, choosing even to know that the people are stressed out, and they're very vulnerable. So you have to be very gentle with them. Like, you have to if they're freaking out, let them have a little room to freak out. Mm-hmm. Sure, let them freak out, because you'd also freak out. It helps being an artist to be a good producer, because producing your own shit is horrible, and it's thankless, and it's impossible. And so when you're producing other people, you can say like, don't worry about that.
Yes.
And they know you mean it, because they know you don't even know I beat myself up because of that for unnecessary reasons for 10 years.
Yeah.
That doesn't, you don't say that. They see it in your being.
Yes.
That they trust you because you say, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
This
has been so fun, man. I feel like we could do this for another 2 hours. It was time flew. And I didn't know what to expect, but now I'm sad that it's over, but we'll do it again sometime. And let's play one of your best known songs, and maybe to me, one of your best known songs, Sing It Loud. And that was, maybe you can talk a little bit about, because I don't know, but I know that from as a Katie Lang song. Yeah. So how did that happen? How did that find its way onto that record?
Well, it's funny, because I did write that song about my niece, my brother's little girl, Daisy Brockett, when she was 2 years old, and she used to when music would be on in the house, she would walk away, like she would be in a different room that, or a different part of the house, and she would just do these crazy dances to the music, and it was just it was so expressive, and her body was like a little rubber band just going nuts. And one day we were all looking at her like, oh my God, that's so cute. And I remember she saw us looking, and she made it look smoother. I thought,
she's a little self-conscious.
Oh, don't do that. Like, no, we love that you're still doing that. And don't let our norm, you think we're normal. We're not normal. Don't let the reflection of our projection tamper down your joy. Because that would, we want you to be this. Everybody here is in full support of that freak flag flying really high.
Yeah.
And I think that when you, maybe I'm not a parent, but I was an uncle, and I know my brother felt that way. And so it's like, it was like, oh, it's important that you know that we love this part of you. And maybe every parent realizes that, and maybe they don't
feel so parental.
Maybe they just feel that, and they're like, I don't want to, have them feel like I want them to be fully joyful,
Yeah. And
I'll do anything it takes to make sure that they feel that for as long as possible, even if it makes it harder for them later. But I remember I showed it to my brother, and he loved it, and then I showed it to KD just because I'm like, hey, check this song I wrote for my niece, and she was like, Joe, I love this song, and I want to cut it. And she said, I want to tweak the first verse with you because I think it needs a little work. And I said, well, yeah, we'll co-write it. She's like, no, I don't want to co-write on this. And I said, well, why? And, she just wanted it to be from me. And
that's very generous.
Yeah, it was really generous. And, she said, Joe, this is going to be a gay anthem. I'm like, bring it on. I was like, anything that would help people feel less lonesome and more free and more loved. It's like, then please sign me up for that service.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, but it's quarterly. It's pretty. There's some expensive chords.
There are expensive chords. And I remember we went back and forth. And she's like, can't you make this more Neil Young chords? And I tried. And I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it. I was like, it is this. It has to be this.
Yeah.
And I said, I understand if you don't like it. I need it to be these chords.
Yeah. I mean, I write simple songs nowadays, but I was, a bit classically trained and I know my way around the certain fifths and I can manipulate it. And, but man, that's getting, it's pretty out there. I spent a bunch of time learning it this morning and I'm like, I don't think I've ever made that shape before. And then dropping from the E major 7 to that B flat, sharp 11.
Yeah.
It's just like my mind would never do that when I was sitting there trying to write a song. So was that just like in that approach to songwriting, did you sit and kind of like play some chords and try to see what came out of it? Or did you have like an idea in advance, or were you just fumbling around on a guitar?
I think you're giving me too much credit. I always feel like that chord change is a little cliche because it's like sort of a bossa nova standby.
It feels very bossa nova, and the like, vocal line is Strud and Gal Garbato all the way. But maybe that's just like my ignorance of
no. I'm obsessed with all that stuff.
Yeah,
and so it's like, I wear the heart on the sleeve, probably. You know what I mean? Like you show your influences or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's a wonderful tune, and I can't wait to play it with you. And man, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the great conversation. I love it.
Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah.
All right. And cut!
1, 2, 3. Tucked away in the corner of the closet is a bell that got you as a little one. Sometimes in the night I would ring it when I found you troubled and away. You would drift away to slumber, to dream. Then the days went by like a freight train, moving fast by the plains and the prairie grains. No one ever did explain. Got it on your own. It's such a privilege to see you become. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud, sing it. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud, sing it. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud, sing it. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud, so everyone knows who you are. So by watch you make choices. Bit my tongue when I saw you taking chances. Watch you go through strings of romances still. I never had a doubt. Always knew you knew who you were. And when the days grow dark with confusion, you could always give your burdens to the music, even when I'm gone. There is a song that will play on and on and on. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud, sing it. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud, sing it. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud, sing it. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud, so everyone knows who you are. loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud, sing it. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud, sing it. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud, sing it. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud. So everyone knows who you are. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud, sing it. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud, sing it. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud, sing it. Sing it loud, sing it, sing it, sing it loud. So you can remember who you are.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, click the subscribe button, or you can watch this video right here. Did I do it right? Is that okay? Okay.